Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome. I'm super excited to be talking to Amanda Stavely, co-owner of Newcastle United, in this fantastic venue. And I think to kick off, I've got a nice, difficult question for you before you start getting too relaxed looking at the sea. Now, I read in an article that in your early 20s, you owned a restaurant.
I did.
And you used to get up early in the morning and go down to the kitchen and pluck chickens for lunch. And now you're a co-owner of Newcastle United. So what I really want to know is, which is easier, plucking chickens or dealing with Premier League footballers?
I think dealing with Premier League footballers, they're much easier to manage. No, I did pluck chickens. I did have a restaurant when I was 19. I think there were some benefits. One good thing about plucking chickens at 4 a.m. is you when you're going into your stadium, at least you can go into the kitchen. And when we had COVID and we had issues with staff, we were able to go in, and I was able to tell the girls how to pull a proper pint, which is always
very useful for Newcastle, I'm sure.
It is.
Obviously, you're an owner and an investor with PCP Capital Partners. You do lots of things. We're going to focus on sports today. Obviously, you also advised Newcastle on the sale. You advised with the sale of Man City as well, and you tried to buy Liverpool twice, right? Yes. Are there any other football deals that you've been involved in that we don't know about?
Just those ones, I think.
I think that's more than enough. But I think what I'm really interested in is, because over that time scale of trying to buy football clubs, the ownership of the club has completely changed. And what, in your opinion, are they still seen as these toys for rich people, or are they financial assets that people are trying to monetize? And if it's the latter, how are they going to try and do that?
They're very much seen as financial assets, and not just financial assets, but there's a whole asset class now that's really emerged through the development of the Premier League. In 2008, the rules, the environment around acquiring any Premier League club was very different. There was different rules on ownership. There was different rules on the stakeholders. And then, obviously the growth, the incredible growth of the Premier League, and in terms of the players it's attracted, the media rights that underpin those valuations have attracted a lot of institutional investors. And actually, I know everybody says, oh, FFP, financial fair play, is difficult, but it's actually that regulatory environment that's allowed private equity to come in and invest. And therefore, you've got a huge change in the type of owner in the Premier League against 15 years ago.
Do you still believe that broadcast rights have got a long way to go? Because if you looked at the articles that people wrote when people were buying and selling football clubs 10 years ago, they still mention broadcast rights. They mention it every year, but we see them tail off a little bit. Are you still really confident that's going to boost valuations?
I think the Premier League, the football is such a unique asset class and yet such a unique product, and that it will always hold its value. I mean, the international rights will continue to grow and develop. I think the way we consume our football will change. At the moment, we actually forecast the Sky deal almost exactly as to where it ended up in the domestic market. You've got incredible interest in football. How that is developed and whether we ever go to a D2C model in 10 years to come, or a combination, a hybrid model. But to do that, you need a lot of infrastructure. And, we all know, it's Bloomberg, you're the best at it. Infrastructure needs a lot of investment.
Just on the valuations, I've got to ask this question. You bought Newcastle for $400 million.
Dollars?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you value it at now?
Ooh.
Give me a hint.
I'm not going to talk about that. I might lose my job.
More, right?
Well, I mean, look, the only thing I'll say about valuation is, in particular, we did, PIF and myself, my husband, and the Rubin family, we bought the club, we think, well, at less than 2 times turnover. Most clubs at the top of the league, you've seen valuations between 5 and 7 times turnover. We look at things, in a more measured way. We still look at evaluation, not just in terms of turnover, but we use multivariate models, which look at EBITDA, look at profitability, and that's critical, especially with the environment we're moving into.
When the consortium that bought Newcastle, when you arrived, I presume you had a great business plan. This is how we're going to run a football club. These are the people we're going to bring in. This is the culture we're going to change. How long did it take for that plan to get thrown out the window?
Pretty fast. I think when you go in, you have all the hype of trying to acquire the club, and it took us 4 years to do that. So we know that we're patient, and we know we were persistent, but there needed to be dramatic change, because the club had been run, in a very different format, and we had very few commercial revenues. We had a team that was aged, a coach that didn't even want to come to work. We had a fan base that was very angry, and we had to take this, incredible club and inject it with some life.
I watched the documentaries, and you've been in the dressing room, you've been on the pitch. How much of owning a sports team is like a drug that clouds your ability to make good business decisions? And how do you step back from that and try not to get too wrapped up in the day-to-day and the week-to-week of running it?
I think we have, incredible partners, and ultimately, the club is majority owned by PIF, and they work incredibly hard to make sure that, we're all very focused on a business plan, and you have to be. You don't think about the drug of running football. You just think the day-to-day stress of running the matches, getting it right, making sure that you make sensible decisions in terms of the transfer window, keep to your FFP constraints, and try to do things that innovate and push outside the box, because that's the only way, we're going to engage our fan base and grow the club. So we don't think about, you soon lose that, because it can be quite terrifying.
You're not going to make the same mistakes as certain London-based teams are making and getting too wrapped up in the football.
We have an incredible coach. We have an incredible team. Bringing Eddie in and bringing the executive team was really important. Obviously, everybody's very much involved in the day-to-day running of the club, but and it's difficult. It's a very competitive market. In terms of players and rules around that, so you have to be very focused.
You're going to make any big transfers this summer?
I'm not sure. You'll have to come back and see a little bit, see how we do in the next few months.
It sounds like maybe a yes.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure what we'll be doing on transfers at the moment.
You said before that you're interested in the multi-club model, and just to explain, that's when an investor takes a stake in lots of different football teams for the ability to get economies of scale, learn about the culture and the players and the data management for different teams. Some cynics say that it's just really people investing in lots of different teams and hoping one of them isn't a total disaster. Are you still keen on doing the multi-club or not?
Yeah, I think we are very much PCP. I mean, look, multi-clubs are part of having football. It's a real benefit to be able to have players and train players that aren't part of your squad. The UEFA rules are changing, and so we have to see what emerges. And obviously, I think the dynamics around whether we could have a club has changed quite dramatically over the last year. So I still am a very big fan of the multi-club model. A lot of other competitors and friends in the Premier League have multi-club relationships, but it has to be considered as a whole.
Are there any markets that are more interesting than others?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've looked at Belgium, we've looked at a lot of European markets, we've looked in Asia, Australia, we've looked in Brazil, pretty much everything. We've looked at every market to see, and getting players into this, through our academy system and through that multi-club model will be very helpful in terms of allowing us to buy and have players part of our journey earlier on.
When you walked into Newcastle United for the first time, did you have any idea that the success of the women's team was going to happen? I mean, you've had 20,000 people watching a game, which is incredible. Did you expect that?
No, not at all. I'm delighted the women have done so well. They came up. It's really hard. We had to start from League 4. and you can either go, it's one up, one down, so there's no, and the bottleneck's so difficult to get promoted. We got promoted in our first year. We're top of the next league now, and the women work so hard. What I've been amazed at is they've been on quite a similar journey to the men. They have the right chemistry, they're hardworking, they're brave, their football has improved dramatically. We create a really strong narrative around their journey, and we try to engage the community and say, look, we really appreciate if you support Newcastle men, you support Newcastle women. So we've had, League 4 matches, 26,000 in St James's. The girls get to play, women get to play on the main stage, which we love, gives them an opportunity to feel and prepares them for big matches. But they, regularly are getting really big attendances.
Why do you think broadcasters I'll be frank about this, broadcasters they don't seem to care so much. They talk as if they do, but the amount they're spending on broadcasting women's football is tiny. Like, what needs to change? Because it's a chicken and egg situation. Their excuses are, we're not making much money from it, but you need your matches to be broadcast into a wide audience to increase popularity. Are you talking to them and trying to encourage them to do a better job?
Yeah, we're always trying to encourage the broadcasters and partners to look at doing new deals. And look, the key thing from the start, the first deal that was done in women's football, I think it was the BBC Sky deal, was important because it gave eyeballs. And, from the change in 2012 onwards, you suddenly see people watching football. Critical that you have to have an element of free to air, just because the more eyeballs, the more we tell, the better. And eventually those broadcast revenues will creep up, I really believe. We have to lobby, we have to engage, we have to take responsibility as owners to give the audience and to give our players that opportunity. And I think that will come. There's a huge growth in women's sport, obviously, and a huge growth in football. But there are still a lot of issues around, particularly around the media rights.
Just go back to the Multiclub, actually. Do you think you could see yourself owning a stake in a Saudi club? Because some of them are open for investment.
Oh, I think it would be a lovely idea. No, I would. I think it would be a fantastic opportunity to take a stake in a Saudi club. I love the league, and I've seen it develop, and it's really exciting to see the competition really growing over here as well. And
do you think there's going to be a Saudi club in the Champions League? Because it's something that we've spoken about.
I'm quite sure there will be a Saudi club in the Champions League.
How long do you think?
Well, I don't know how long, but I don't think, knowing Saudi, I don't think it'll take too long.
Okay. The other question is, I'm kind of interested in your opinion about how football is run as a business. And I love using this fact, and I hope it's true. The Premier League makes the same amount of revenue as the NHL, right? Which is amazing to me. Like, one of the biggest leagues in the world makes the same amount of money as ice hockey. Yep. And I think I'm all right in thinking there's no ice hockey fans here at the moment, right? And no disrespect to it, but it doesn't seem to even be, they shouldn't be on the same page. The Premier League should make much more money, and it doesn't. Like, do you think it's run well as a business?
I think we all have to do more to make sure that we grow our revenues. I think there's been a much more focus from the Premier League owners to make sure we grow our commercial revenues. And our media and as a product, we should be much more aggressive. There is a regulator coming in, and there's much more focus on sustainability. Sometimes when you over-regulate, you can slow growth, and I think we have to make sure that we get the right balance between the right regulatory environment, the right rules, and the right financial fair play, the rules that promote growth. And that's the only way you're going to get great football. And actually, the one thing about the last few seasons in the Premier League is any club can win. Any club can win any game. And that's good. That means you get some incredibly exciting football. So we have to provide great product. I'm a big advocate, I know, of getting allowing media into our dressing rooms. We've been quite brave with that because we weren't a big club, so we had to go and tell our story. And I think the more we engage our audience and involve them in our journey, the more that revenue will grow.
Where do you think the Premier League could do better? I mean, what's it falling down on?
I think you'll have to ask this. I think you'll have to ask the executive team where they're going. It's a difficult time because there's just been so much focus on on sustainability that people have actually forgot that we're running we're providing entertainment and we've got to grow this business. And it's not easy to actually. Football is difficult. You have very limiting, financial fair plays rules. You have, so many rules and restrictions about player purchases. So it really does need probably some fresh thinking.
We've already spoken, I think, on the panel discussions before about some of the influx of Saudi money into sport. But for me, the hidden and real story is this influx of US money, especially into UK football and European football. I think a third of the league clubs are now owned by Americans and half the Premier League teams. Are you concerned that there's actually going to be too many US owners in the Premier League?
No, I'm not concerned there's going to be too many. I mean, the US owners have traditionally been very good for the Premier League. I mean, when we looked at buying, we mentioned I'd looked at buying Liverpool 3 times. I think one was when Mr. Gillette was running it, and then obviously when Tom and John and the FSG team, and they've done an incredible job growing an incredible club. And I think what I like about it is the US is such a big market. We need to attach that market more. But there needs to be a balance of all owners, and when you get a balance of, a lot of people say, oh, well, there's a lot of Saudi influence into sport, but actually, proportionately, it's very small when you compare it with the amount of US ownership. But we have a robust group of owners at the Premier League, which allows for good debate and it's helpful.
Do you think it's just because it's an American, it's a cultural thing? Because I'm sure if it was 10, if half the Premier League was owned by French owners, our tabloids would have a field day, right? And there'd be protests on the streets, right? Is it just because the US are better at owning businesses in sports businesses, and they manage the teams better?
Possibly. I mean, they do manage assets incredibly well. So it's and there was a real correlation. There was a dislocation between the Premier League rights and the NFL rights. So that has slightly narrowed. So I can imagine when we were looking at the US multiples, I remember going into a meeting with, Mr. Henry and as advisors who were very bright and saying, well, we value clubs on 5 times multiples. And I was like, you're mad. And they were right, on turnover multiples. But, we were still managing clubs very differently. So I think the way that private equity will value clubs as coming in will also change the dynamics, and people will need to be, we need to be able to produce profitable businesses. That's key.
Just moving away from football, because we're nearing the end, and we can hear the Formula One going. But do you think that you might end up trying to look at a stake in a Formula One team at some point?
As PCP, my husband and I, we looked at Williams a few years ago, and we were really excited. We saw a lot of similarities between Williams and Newcastle, and same. So we've looked at quite a lot of teams, and it's such it's such a great business, and we're so proud to be here today. So we do love Formula One.
So what's stopping you getting over the line, do you think?
We're not. We're far too. I think we're too busy on Newcastle at the moment. But we have looked, definitely.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Giles.
It's been fantastic, and we enjoyed talking about everything from chickens to Formula One. So we've done the whole lot. And thank you very much for our audience for your time.
Thank you.